Welcome to the Eddy Network podcast. I'm your host, Ed Breniger. My guest today is Ed Essey. This is part one of two episodes that take up our conversation. Ed works for Microsoft and operates their Microsoft Garage, which is a center of innovation and hackership at the company. It's a fascinating conversation that I had with him. I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to meet him and to talk about things that go on in a large technological company. Not something I have had the opportunity to do very often. And so I'm greatly appreciative for the time he gave to me and also to you as we talk about innovation at Microsoft, but also innovation more broadly. I hope you will find this very interesting. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe on the YouTube site as well as the Substack site. And I thank you for watching. And I hope you enjoy this episode with Ed Essey.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi,
Ed.
Ed. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Good to see you.
Good.
So do you where do you work? What's your what do you do? I know you live in Seattle, but what do you do?
What do I do? Well, what do I work and what do I do are slightly different questions. It's
Okay.
one contains the other, but I'll tell you where I work. I work at Microsoft.
Okay.
And For Microsoft, I work in an innovation program there called the Microsoft Garage. Um,
Huh.
we are a program that builds a culture of innovation at in Microsoft. Our our mission is that we accelerate the cultural transformation of Microsoft by providing employees with opportunities to be creative, collaborate, and experiment. And we are our big Super Bowl caliber event is the Microsoft annual hackathon, and we're about to run our 12th of those. We have around 80,000 people participate. Last year we had 20,000, we had over 20,000 projects in it. Um, this is a program we've been doing since our third CEO, Satya Nadella, took the helm, and it aligns very well to the culture that he's been driving in the company.
Yeah, I like
Uh,
him. I think,
yeah, he's fantastic.
and it's so unusual I mean, what he's third generation, right? The leader.
He's the third, yeah, yeah.
It's so unusual for the third generation to be so oriented around innovation. I mean, it's you think about family businesses, and the first generation they create the business, the second generation maintains it, and the third generation finds ways to take the wealth out of it and then sell it off or do something with it. They lose that sense of generational commitment to the institution.
Yeah, as you speak of it, uh, I'm thinking about Genghis Khan, and uh, because Genghis Khan didn't want to give the empire to only one person when he passed along, he gave it to all of his children, then eventually all of his grandchildren. And so by then it was quite distributed. But we also know the only other Khan from that lineage that most people know by name was Kublai Khan, who
That's
was the grandson of Genghis Khan. So uh, that said, and did rise up and also led into the Han Dynasty of China. That said, in my experience, businesses and families are quite different. Um,
right.
from from what I from what I've seen, it's like I've seen that leadership or that innovation in organizations is usually there's like the innovator and then the operator, and then the innovator and the operator in tiers like that. And so, uh, at the time, our stock price was at like $22. And leadership wanted quite a bit of a shakeup. And they wanted to bring in innovation. And it was actually a big part of what Satya said, his first mantra when he became CEO. And he did his first public address to the company. And by the way, he did it in the garage space that we run. So like right in the spot where hackers gather around tables. He was there and he gathered people around. His mantra was uh, the industry doesn't respect tradition, it only respects innovation.
Hmm.
And, he was brought in not to carry on the legacy of the father or his predecessor. He was brought in to bring in something new. And so, whereas like Steve may have like helped professionalize and really scale the organization of a wily founder, Satya was brought in to bring in that lens of empathy and innovation.
But that takes some real insight by the board, for example, that they see that as their mission rather than protecting the brand or protecting the assets, or that they're willing. I mean, I'm guessing I'm asking this question. Are they willing to invest into, in a sense, sacrifice parts of the company in order to grow the company in the direction it needs to go in? Is that a, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but they're willing to give up some of it, some of the tradition, some of the things that have been traditionally there in order to go in directions that they foresee as being the future?
I mean, that's my understanding. The only lens I have into the board meeting are whatever minutes get published,
Right. Right.
and the actions, right?
And we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but that's what they want us to see. And I mean,
Hmm.
I'm thinking about what's happening in the Formula One world, as Christian Horner gets fired by Red Bull, who has built this, juggernaut of a race team, and all of a sudden he's gone. And it's I think these things are really interesting, how the function of organizations. But what I've seen, and maybe you're in a rarefied air of being in one of the top companies in the world, or maybe the top company in the world. But what I have seen in my career is that most people are resistant to change and resistant to taking the kind of steps you're talking about. And the question is why?
I see that a lot too. Like, so why are they resistant or why are they willing to change?
Why are they resistant to the changes that they already know they need to make, but they're unwilling to make them?
Yeah, I think about that a lot as well. Um, it's usually they are in some way incentivized by the status quo.
Yeah. And who is incentivizing them? Well, people who are risk averse. Maybe that's the way of putting it.
For sure. Yeah, and one of the main incentives often over growth is safety and comfort.
Yeah.
So when you were telling the story of this Boeing woman you met, uh, I was really touched with it, and at the same time I was not expecting the answer, the outcome you gave. So there was really good payoff to the story. I like how you structured it. Uh, but there are other people who've been at a company for a very long time who do it out of momentum and safety
True.
and
Very true.
do it with what they're comfortable with. The fact that uh, you recognized she felt seen when you pointed out her commitment and her love for the company, uh, demonstrates that for her it was more than safety and risk aversion.
Well, my orientation is to look at what is the motivation that the person has, and why are
Mm,
they doing this, and why have they stayed there? And I don't believe that it's always because they're averse to risk, or it may be that they just do not have the freedom or the leverage to be able to leave and go somewhere else because of family considerations. But you can pick that up too. I mean, you can see when people
mm,
uh, they're kind of bland about their work, and they're not negative about it, but they're just kind of okay. This is what I do, and at 5 o'clock I leave and I go home and I take care of my family, and a lot of people I think find themselves in that situation when if they were had a different situation at home where there was a little bit more freedom, maybe it's financial freedom or something like that, they could expand their reach and go into different directions. And I meet people all the time who are kind of stuck in what they do, and they're stuck for a variety of reasons, but they're stuck, and they don't know how to get unstuck and go find something new to do.
mm.
And it's a tough thing for them.
So how did you read in her what really drove her? How did you do that?
I was reading, I was I was taking what I had experienced with all these engineers and the conversations we were having in my webinars, and saying, okay, this is the hidden part of Boeing. This is hidden from the public because this is just who they are with each other. And they like each other, they like working together, and so I assumed that culture um, existed beyond the 75 people that I was working with. And so I'm assuming that of her. And I'm assuming that of anyone I'm going to meet, that there's something that may not be fulfilled, but something that they love or would love to see happen. Because I think we're all kind of born that way. We're kind of built that way. We're looking for something that gives us meaning, and it gives us a sense of satisfaction, a sense of fulfillment. And for someone I mean, who's not even 50 years old yet, to be at a company for 28 years, that's what really spoke to me because she was sharp and she was very attractive, and I knew that she could go anywhere she wanted to go. She could do anything she wanted to do, but she chose to stay there, and I wanted to celebrate that.
Mm, that's
It's,
beautiful.
yeah. So and I tell that story. I don't always tell it in the context of Boeing, but I tell that story a lot for that very reason because I want people who are listening to think about themselves in that same role. Do I love this
Mm.
company that I'm working for, or I'm just kind of waiting to get through with it so I can move on to retirement or wherever it is. So, how did you? Are you a hacker?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. So,
I guess I say of course, but like I think everybody is in some ways.
okay. Well, let's talk about that because I had no idea that this is your world. I didn't know anything, and
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it because, in many respects, you guys kind of hold the string to the kite, and you can take that kite wherever you want to go. You have leadership capacities that other people don't have because you're constantly working at the edges and the boundaries of what is known, and you're looking at things from a different perspective. Am I right about that?
it feels that way. Though I ask, would you have said that 12 years ago?
Um, well, it would have been a different context. 12 years ago, it would have been um, uh, the hackers were going to be released because of what had transpired in the late 2000s, with the recession and the risk averse corporate people were pulling back and they weren't going to make changes and they were kind of waiting for things to return to normal. But people who are innovative were going to go move forward, and they were starting things that's what I saw, and and when I moved to Jackson Hole 10 years ago, I fell in with a bunch of startup people, and some of them were hackers, and so I saw, they weren't following somebody's game plan. They were creating their own game plan, and I felt like the opportunities were growing significantly in that moment.
Hmm.
That if you are innovative, we're watching kind of two trends pass in the night. One is the old traditional corporate way of doing things, which is very regimented, and that was no longer working very well. And all the people who were very innovative were ascending in prominence, and that excites me because I'm a person. I like change. So 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 what was your first experience of hacking? Was it something that happened in high school? Was it, in a computer class in high school that, you figured out, hey, I see through this code here. I see something there that other people in my classroom aren't seeing, or something like that.
Gosh, so uh, I must look younger than I am, but there wasn't really computing even taught in my high school. Uh, when so okay, before I get into that story, I want to clarify the definition of hacking. So uh, when we talk about hacking in the garage, we're not talking about like those black hats who are trying to like break into computer systems and steal your stuff. We're talking about people taking a very creative, scrappy, resourceful approach to understanding and solving a problem. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a computer-based thing. But yeah, I can go all the way back to my childhood. When I was 5 years old, my dad brought a computer home. And my my father had when he went to college at Penn State, he changed his major a few times. At one point, he was in computer science, but he left it because he felt he was clumsy with the punch cards and he would drop them on the ground. And he found that to be so frustrating that he ended up switching into accounting and he eventually bought his dad's business, which was a small tire shop in southwestern Pennsylvania, south of Pittsburgh, which I mean, to his credit, he really grew that up and sold it and retired and uh, created a great life for uh, for all the generations of his family to follow. I'm sure. And but he brought that computer home, and this was uh, an old 8088. So
Mhm.
it didn't have a didn't even have a hard drive back then. It was a monochrome monitor, took 5 1/4 floppy disks, had almost no RAM at all, um, and probably 64K of RAM or something like that. I was 5 years old, and he kept telling me, "This is the future, and you're gonna have a lot of fun with it." And he put this at this desk in the house, and I would sit in front of it all the time trying to figure out how to make it work. And my next door neighbor was a kid a few years older than me who I looked up to like crazy, who uh, he's into he's into computing as well. In fact, he's an executive in the computing industry now. Uh, but we would always kind of talk about computers and figure it out. And I was figuring out how to write my first programs before I was 10. And in a way, I was more of a hustler than a hacker because I was always trying to figure out how to get my parents to invest in upgrades to that computer. So I was, we need more RAM, we need a hard drive, we need this floppy disk, we need a new uh, video card, and I would research these things and have the catalogs and go to the store and buy them and put them in myself and uh, figure out how to put a math coprocessor on and overclock it. So that was something I did growing up. Before America Online AOL was even out, I found some local BBSs. If you know that,
Mhm.
uh, if you know that term, these bulletin board systems, and I was
Yeah,
joining them all the time.
yeah.
And um, so I was very into computers. I'd say, but probably what got me into this whole path of computers was that which happened to me around when I was 5. And at 5, I also, for the first time, saw the MIT Lego robot competition on TV. And geez, I live in an area that didn't even have cable. So this was while I was on vacation visiting my grandparents. And I was sleeping outside on the lanai, and I woke up and turned on the TV, and I saw this on the news. And I said, MIT. I want to go there, and I want to be in that MIT. I want to be in that Lego robot competition. Uh, so I, the way the family story goes is I asked my mom, well, what will it take to go there? And she told me, like, you're going to need to get straight A's. You're going to need to be involved in multiple clubs and multiple things. And that's what I did. I went on to be valedictorian of my high school and go to MIT. And I ended up in that Lego robot competition once as a student, and then twice after I graduated. I was a mentor to students who were in the program. Uh, I'm actually kind of looking back over there. Here, uh, I have a little kind of like altar to myself, and one of the things I have on it is a part of that first of the box from the first Lego robot competition. It was in. It's like sitting right over there.
So your story is really kind of an archetypal story of many people of in your age range that discovered something that people in my generation didn't know anything about, and which was computers. And you know your generation found that out and did something with it. And I don't think that story is widely told enough, particularly for younger generations today. They just think that this stuff has always been there, but it has not. And see, I see the creativity that that was required to create what we have today as extraordinary. You know, it's and I think it happened so fast that we just don't appreciate how difficult it was or how significant it is in changing the way the world works.
Yeah. What you said resonates in a few ways with me. One, like some of the big founders, like Bill Gates and Paul Allen and Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, like they they were there at the right place at the right time to see
Huh?
the chips. And then they also had enough investment and so on from their parents that they could do this exploration at a time before the industry existed.
Hmm.
Uh, Microsoft recently celebrated its 50th birthday, and they brought Bill out. Another interesting thing they did is they brought out all these like famous like TikTok creators to kind of interview the executives. And somebody asked him, one of these young like 20 something TikTok creator asked him like, what was the computer industry like when Microsoft was starting? And I don't know, like either it was a naive question or it was an intentional setup question that was meant to look naive, but he was like, there was none. You know? And he didn't go as far as to say he created it, but that's that was what was implied in his answer. And it was designed to help the whole company feel like they were part of this important legacy, which did a great job of that. Um, but like another interesting part of this is I would have never imagined when I was a kid interested in computers that someday they would be mainstream and cool. Like, I would have never imagined that. Like it was for everyone in my generation. So I was born in 79. So uh, even when I entered MIT in the year 1997, the people in the class before me, not all of the students had a computer. In fact, it was fewer than half of computer science students at MIT in 1996 even had a computer at school. And when we had a computer, it would fill up a whole desk. And it was like this is where the industry was. And it was, we took, maybe it was social risks or we were social awkward, but it came at social costs to be as into computing as we were growing up.
Yeah. I bought my first computer, I think it was in 88 or 89. It was a Zeos. And it was a great computer. It was really a great computer. And uh and it was the family's computer. Though I used it more than anyone. And when my oldest son was 12, which would have been in 97, so the year you went to MIT, he was 12 and he came to his mother and I and said, "I'd like my own computer." He was wanting he was he had the aspiration of being a novelist. He wanted to start writing. And so we found him a used computer, and for the next 2 years, he'd spend 2 to 3 hours a day writing. And he wanted to teach himself how to write plot and write dialogue. And, he's a young boy, so he was interested in war stories and wanted to write battle scenes and stuff like that. And he ended up writing a 175,000 word novel about an alternative history of the World War II. But it was because he had his own computer that he could do that. And, what I saw in that, as I reflect back on that that was in many respects the first opportunity for us to say, okay, here's this. This is about what you're going to be doing with your life as an adult. And what else do we need to do to help you support you in learning how to manifest who you want to be as an adult, even though you're only 12 years old. And so he's now published his first novel, and he's got two others that he's close to finishing, and he'll spend his whole life not writing. And also he works for Amazon in the so another Seattle company. But it's
Yeah.
but I think that kids today don't understand that when they get their own phone, here's my phone, there it is,
Yeah.
that they are being given the keys to the rest of their life if they choose to use it in that way. I mean, it's a choice. And and that, is true for all of us. So, so how did you come to work at Microsoft? What was that pathway?
uh, so I've already given some of the years. So the year I graduated college, 2001, was a very interesting year.
Yeah.
uh, in the world and in the industry. And I saw myself completely as a startup guy at the time. All of my, my internships were in small companies. I even had a job offer to go to out back to the one in the Silicon Valley that I had interviewed at the year before. Before I had already rented this beautiful place in Mountain View. It was like an acre of wooded land. It was teeming with deer. It overlooked the valley, and I was so excited to return back as a full timer. I'd even got a bunch of my friends hired at the company. It was going to be great. And the week before my finals, I got a call that the job offer was being rescinded, and all of my friends did as well. And then I had interviewed at a couple other companies that had given me offers, and I I had told them I was going to take this other one, but I called them back, and both of them were willing to hire me. Uh, so I accepted one of the other offers. The next day they rescinded it. Then I accepted the third one. The next day they rescinded that, and this was just like during finals week of my senior year. After that, I ended up taking a job at a company. I went in like after I interviewed, I got called into jury duty, and I was told I can't start my job I can't start the job formally until jury duty's over. 3 days later, I come back, butcher paper on the windows. They didn't even message me that the company had gone under in that 3 days I was on jury duty. So on Monday, the day I was supposed to start, by Thursday was gone. This was what was happening. My college girlfriend, her dad was the VP of engineering at Enron, and we know what happened there.
Yeah.
Uh, I can't bring MCI into the story, or it would complete everything. But there was one other big thing that happened that year, a few months later. Uh,
Is
and
this the outcome of the dot-com bubble that burst? Is this
yeah, yeah, this was the dot-com bubble bursting. All those job offers got rescinded. And then, okay, Enron, more established company, right? My girlfriend's father's the VP of engineering there, uh, right? Enron's gone, right? It's like uh, stock was worth 5 cents. I actually bought a whole bunch of it in case somehow it came back. Because at a nickel, like, that could have been that could have been great.
it's a penny
Uh,
stock? Yeah, yeah.
uh, but I was also working at like sort of a five MIT people in a basement type startup, and we we had angel funding and so on, and we were really excited. Uh, we were pitching to VCs, and then we had made this great demo that worked. Our big press release day, September 11th.
Oh my.
our our story got drowned out. Our news was gone. At the time, Microsoft was the only company that was hiring. And I did not want to go to Microsoft at all. It just seemed too big and bulky. And looking back on it, it was, like 22,000 employees back then. Whereas it's over 10 times that right now. Uh, but I ended up going there with the plan that I was going to just sit out this crash of the dot-com bubble and get back into tech after that. And Ed, for the next 17 years, every Microsoft poll that came out of there was this question on it. How much longer do you see yourself at the company? I would check the 0 to 2 year box 17 years in a row.
Hmm. Wow.
And I was constantly looking outside the company for the next job, the next opportunity.
Did did you feel that? I mean, what were you thinking? It was just that this is just a temporary job, or that the company
I
was,
was thinking it was a temp I was thinking it was a temporary job, a way to keep stuff funded before I created the business that I intended to create. And I had this sort of narrative in my head that uh, that I was building somebody else's vision
yeah,
instead of my own. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that was interesting is every time I would interview and get another job offer, I'd come back and look at what I had and the people around me, and I would talk to my manager about it, and I would say, like, you know what, I'd rather stay here. I've got this other offer. I'd rather stay here, but I'd rather be working on this, or I see this opportunity to build this instead, or I'd rather work like this. And every time I did that, my manager said, I'd rather you work on that too. And I basically spent that 17 years crafting the perfect job for me.
that's that's fantastic. You were leveraging change to leverage change to get the place that you wanted to do it. And the fact that you could do that within the company itself is the exception to the rule. That's
Yep.
great.
And
Yeah, that's just yeah.
the thing is, so I've now been at Microsoft over 23 years, and what my job is that, like, I spend my job coaching entrepreneurs. So I view it as my purpose, why I'm in this body on this planet at this time. This purpose of my of this life is to empower people to know their worth and use their gifts to make meaningful change in the world. And I get to do that. I get to do that every day at Microsoft, working with entrepreneurs. Um, I I actually, uh, as part of my day job, uh, I created frameworks and videos coaching people to do it. Like, I coach people constantly on how to do this, and we've pulled off all kinds of amazing stuff together. One story I love to tell is about uh, somebody who's now a friend of mine. He had a child who very early on had a stroke and led to cerebral palsy and epilepsy.
Wow.
And uh, him and his wife founded a nonprofit to help everyone who was like his son. And when I met him, uh, and the first time it was virtual, it was because he lives in Milan. Uh, he said, in order to help my son, I realized I have to help everyone like him. And he created a project to help families of children with epilepsy reduce the number and severity of seizures in those children, and has gone on to, although some people, their kids were having between 25 and 50 seizures a night. So imagine what it's like for parents.
Oh my.
Like, so it's one thing to be a parent of a newborn and really not get much sleep for 10 months. But imagine being the parent of a child who's having dozens of seizures every single night. They don't sleep, and they don't sleep for over 7 years.
Yeah.
And he was so excited, like, every night that he was having, my son didn't have a seizure. My son didn't have a seizure. And he got up to 500. He got up to 500 nights in a row. He got up to multiple years with technology that he was able to make at the hackathon. And I was his coach, and I helped him get this project out in the market and build a team for it and move it forward. And that's just one of dozens of stories that I've got to help. And I ended up making a course on how to do it. That this is just the transcripts of all the videos that I just printed just to have my own copy of it. Uh, but this can only help people at Microsoft because there's a lot of proprietary stuff in there. So I if you don't mind that I plugged to you that I recently wrote a book that's going to come out next year about how people could be entrepreneurs in their own life. And I paid my own money for this book, and I don't expect to ever recover the money. But my goal is to get it out to people who work in companies so that they could figure out a way to help the company work for them and everybody could win. And my book is called The Inside Job, the Entrepreneur's Toolkit to Mastermind Meaningful Change. And it's a lot smaller than this. I think it's better, and it shows how entrepreneurship is like a heist movie, and it uses this heist movie metaphor to make it just really applicable to people who would never label themselves uh, entrepreneur, innovator. They don't need to know the jargon. It's just stories and practical tips and metaphors to help them.
I totally get it. My whole thing is to encourage and equip people to take personal initiative to create.
Mm.
And what I find is that the structures of where they work really suppress that human desire to take initiative, to create something, to start something. But that when people start doing that, it grants them their life. It becomes the life that they've always wanted to have, but didn't know how to get there. So I think what you're doing is not just a good thing for Microsoft or a good thing for people who have some kind of idea that they want to work on. I think it's essential for the health of our society that we put people in a position where they can take action on the things that matter to them, and they have the support of the companies that they work for to go do that. I mean, you're an example of that, and I think it's really fantastic. And my impression of Microsoft has just gone through the roof now because
Oh,
because of because of your story has shown that there's something within that structure which allows for people to discover it's a trope, but they're inner genius, but it's really discover the inner desire for wanting to be a person of impact. That's really the what I see there. And um, so much of where we are in society is suppressing that kind of desire. It's an interesting thing to talk about innovation in our world. It's something that continues to become a topic of conversation with me, with my guest, and and none more interesting than my conversation with Ed Essey. You've just heard part one of two parts, and we will continue our conversation next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Thank you for watching.